Welcome to Pulseline Reports, the channel where we dive deep into the most pressing political, economic, and social challenges of our time. In today's episode, we're focusing on the crisis surrounding sanctions against Russia, the growing internal tensions within the European Union, and the new geopolitical dynamics shaping Europe's future. We'll analyze Hungary's bold stance, Brussels' response, and how other European and Balkan countries are recalibrating their strategies. Stay tuned for an in-depth analysis and exclusive insights. Since the beginning of the Ukraine conflict in 2014, the European Union and its Western partners have imposed economic sanctions on Russia to isolate the country and weaken its capacity to support military aggression. Following the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, these sanctions were significantly intensified, targeting Russia's economy and international trade and financial relations. These measures are among the harshest ever imposed on a country and were designed to exploit Russia's economic vulnerabilities. However, the sanctions have had unforeseen effects, deeply impacting not only Russia but also the European Union, generating long-term economic, political, and social consequences. One of the central elements of the sanctions is the energy embargo. Before the war, Russia was the main supplier of oil and natural gas to Europe, accounting for approximately 40% of the EU's gas consumption. Germany, the bloc's largest economy, was particularly reliant on cheap Russian gas to power its industrial sectors, such as chemicals, automotive, and capital goods production. The embargo forced Europe to seek alternative energy sources in an extremely short time frame, leading to a rapid increase in prices. Liquefied natural gas, or LNG, from the United States and Qatar became the primary alternative, but transporting it entails higher costs than pipeline-delivered gas. Germany, which had previously benefited from energy stability provided by Russia, reported a more than 35% increase in energy prices for companies and consumers in 2023. Major industrial players like BASF and Siemens reduced their operations in Europe, preferring to relocate production to Asia or North America, where costs are lower. These relocations led to significant job losses in the manufacturing sector, affecting families and entire communities. Germany's industrial production declined by 4% in 2024, marking the largest contraction in 3 decades. Italy and Spain were also severely affected. In these countries, inflation reached record levels, exceeding 10% in 2023, fueled by rising energy and food prices. Their governments had to allocate billions of euros to subsidize citizens' energy bills, but this increased public debt and exerted additional pressure on already fragile economic systems. In France, mass protests against the rising cost of living became a constant feature, destabilizing the country's political landscape and putting pressure on President Emmanuel Macron's government. According to a recent report by the European Central Bank, the Eurozone inflation rate reached 7.2% in November 2024, with significant price hikes in energy and food. In Poland, high energy costs have led to the closure of over 15% of small and medium-sized businesses, sparking mass protests in major cities. In Eastern Europe, smaller and more vulnerable countries like Bulgaria and Romania faced a dual challenge: finding alternative energy sources and managing public dissatisfaction caused by rising living costs. These states, which relied significantly on Russian gas to heat homes and fuel industries, were hit hard by the abrupt transition to more expensive alternatives. Politicians in these countries began to question the effectiveness of the sanctions, warning that Brussels' policies risk economically destabilizing the entire region. Hungary, led by Viktor Orban, has been one of the most vocal critics within the European Union. Orban argued that the sanctions hurt the EU more than Russia and refused to fully align with the bloc's policies. Hungary signed a long-term agreement with Gazprom, ensuring a stable supply of natural gas at a fixed price far below the European average. This strategy allowed Hungary to avoid the severe energy crisis that affected other member states and maintain relatively stable economic growth. But this stance has drawn Brussels' ire. The European Union has blocked cohesion and development funds for Hungary, citing alleged rule of law violations. Nevertheless, Orban has responded sharply, arguing that Brussels' policies only deepen the divisions between member states. Furthermore, Budapest is actively negotiating with Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan to diversify its energy sources, a move that could reduce its reliance on Western markets. Over the past 12 months, Russia reported record increases in oil exports to India, offsetting losses caused by the European embargo. For instance, Indian imports of Russian oil grew by 40% in 2024. Additionally, Moscow has strengthened trade ties with Africa and Latin America, offering these regions energy and technology at competitive prices. On the other hand, Russia has demonstrated unexpected economic resilience. Although its GDP initially declined, government stabilization measures managed to limit the damage. Moscow redirected energy exports to Asian markets, and China and India became the largest buyers of Russian oil. Natural gas exports to China increased significantly through newly built pipelines, and Russia signed new trade agreements with countries in Africa and the Middle East. Additionally, Russia became a global leader in wheat exports, leveraging this advantage to expand its influence in African nations facing food insecurity. Another unexpected effect of the sanctions was the acceleration of the use of alternative currencies in international transactions. Russia strengthened its collaboration with China to use the yuan in bilateral trade, thus reducing dependence on the US dollar. Simultaneously, the BRICS group began closer cooperation to develop an alternative financial system to counter Western dominance. These changes could reshape the structure of the global financial system in the long term. However, despite this resilience, Russia's economy has not entirely escaped the effects of the sanctions. Technological isolation remains a major issue. Export bans on advanced technologies such as semiconductors and industrial equipment have slowed progress in key industries, including automotive and aviation. Russia has been forced to seek domestic solutions or collaborate with China to develop alternatives, but these efforts are still in their early stages. While Russia consolidates its relations with Asia, Europe risks losing influence in its peripheral regions. The Balkans, a strategic area for European stability, have become a geopolitical battleground between the EU, Russia, and China. For instance, China is financing the construction of the Belgrade-Budapest high-speed railway, a $2 billion project that will bolster economic ties between the Balkans and Central Europe. Additionally, Serbia has acquired modern defense systems from China, marking a clear shift away from EU policies. Chinese investments in Serbia increased by 25% in 2024, making Beijing the country's primary economic partner. Furthermore, Serbia is negotiating with Russia to expand a gas pipeline, potentially positioning itself as a regional energy hub for the Balkans. Simultaneously, Austria has begun direct negotiations with Russia to resume gas imports, drawing criticism from Brussels. These geopolitical realignments underscore the European Union's fragility in the face of unprecedented external and internal challenges. Within the bloc, tensions among member states are growing. On one hand, major economies like Germany and France are trying to protect their national interests through unilateral measures, such as bilateral agreements with Qatar for gas supplies. On the other hand, smaller countries in Eastern and Southern Europe bear the brunt of the sanctions costs, but their voices are often ignored in Brussels. In conclusion, the sanctions against Russia, while designed to weaken the Kremlin and protect democratic values, have had devastating secondary effects on the European Union. The energy crisis, inflation, and social discontent are just some of the short-term consequences. In the long term, the risk of fragmentation within the European bloc, the loss of global competitiveness, and the diminishing of its international influence could pose existential challenges. European leaders face a dilemma: how to maintain bloc unity, protect the economic interests of member states, and respond to emerging geopolitical challenges without sacrificing the fundamental values on which the Union is built. It remains to be seen whether Europe can turn these crises into opportunities or if it will become a victim of its own strategic decisions. This has been Pulseline Reports, where we shed light on the complex realities of global politics. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.